Hey there, Adam Eaton and Brian Peterson back with you again on another Sons Today. And before we get to all that, first of all, we want to thank everyone for watching and giving feedback on these throughout the year. Brian and I have been trying to do this, to make up for football talk and make sure you have something to talk about too. So we appreciate all of the conversation, everybody who's supported. Make sure you subscribe, like, rate, review, all that good stuff. And we really, 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 really appreciate that. But on this episode, Brian, I want to start here. A lot going on around UCF, a lot to kind of get to, but you actually started something, and I think it's a positive thing. And I want to kind of open the show with this. You had a tweet in reaction to some of the news this week around UCF signing day and the high school class and Scott Frost and demeanor and reports of other schools with NIL. Just really kind of, it seemed like a lot of things kind of bubbled together on the surface on Wednesday, all at the same time. And you took to Twitter to share some of your thoughts. Now, Twitter has a character limit, right? You can't tweet as much as you want. So some stuff I'm sure gets lost.
Au contraire.
So I want to start there. It's now been about 4 or 5 days since you sent out your tweets, that you sent out your thoughts. So I want to kind of start there and just check in with you and sort of what you're feeling now is, how you have, or if you have changed your thoughts based on your tweet. And for those who haven't seen it, kind of what it is that you were talking about when you took to Twitter on Wednesday to share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I got a little frustrated, kind of got some pent up frustration that I let out on social media a few days ago. Do you want me to read the tweet? I have it in front of me. You want me to
How many words are we talking here? I mean,
it's lengthy. It's lengthy.
I mean, when people read stuff on podcasts, it usually goes over well. Don't get me wrong, but
it's multiple paragraphs.
Maybe you could just summarize this one.
So I just touched on a few points that it all started with our signing day class, our high school signing day class, which if you're watching the show, I'm sure you're following along with the names and players that we signed out of high school this week. And we'll get into the size of the class in comparison to our Big 12 peers and all that fun stuff. But what started out as a fairly strong day, just the excitement with signing these players, the future of our program, if you will, I don't know, the day felt underwhelming. And then there was news coming out of West Central Florida with the Cows hiring a new coach, which is just an absolute grand slam hire, all things, being what we know so far. Follow that up with questions about rev share and money that UCF does or does not have, and players potentially entering the portal, leaving the program. And then to top it off, we've got Scott Frost in a press conference talking about how the college football system is broken. And, we've kind of heard this broken record over and over again. So there was just a couple of things that piled on throughout the week that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I kind of let my frustrations be known on Twitter. And I try not to be too positive or too negative, but this tweet was probably more on the frustrated side than the positive side. Most of my tweets are fairly positive if you had to draw the line somewhere. And it was just coming off a 5-7 season, 4-8 last year, just vibes don't feel right now. And I know we had a lot of promise this season starting when Scott Frost was hired back, and as fans, we get emotional, when things don't go our way, and we're losing out on a bowl game, and all these things start to snowball. But it's not a fun time to be a Knight right now. And there's just not a ton to be looking forward to. So I kind of aired some of my grievances out towards UCF football, towards athletics, just in general. And I got some pushback. There were some people that agreed with me, probably more than disagreed with me. And there were some people that brought up some valid points as well. And I'm by no means an expert in UCF athletics. Please don't, take anything that way. But there are also some fairly valid points, I think, that I made. And we can talk about some of those throughout the show, Adam. But I don't think I want to walk anything back other than, it's tough to be critical of something that you love. And that's our university. I'm protective over it. I'm protective over our football program, all of our athletics programs. And sometimes, you just got to voice your opinion and let, others know and see if they agree or disagree, and kind of have that conversation to see if we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I'll say this. You and I were talking after that, kind of off air, off show, whatever you want to call it, and I think I even said the same on the live show this week. Is your critique your criticism, your feedback, and others that I saw as well, I think comes from a good place, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are somebody, and most people that are of that criticism are somebody who cares about the program, wants to see it do well, wants to see the university do well. So this isn't shtick, this isn't for show, this isn't some sort of a bit, right? This is just kind of pure frustration because of how much you and others care about this university, right? So I think for anybody who thought it was shtick or like Brian's doing a thing here, I think what made it interesting and authentic was it wasn't just that authentic. It was coming from an honest place, and maybe an emotional place to your point, but an honest place, and not of a place of the sky is falling, just a place of how do we get better around here. And I think that's what I assume was kind of your thought process, is not that you want to put the town on alert that things are all terrible here, but rather asking the question out loud: how do things get better? What do we have to do from here?
Yeah, no, that's completely correct. Everybody is allowed to share their opinion on social media for better.
Some people
or
shouldn't
worse.
be allowed to, but okay.
Some people shouldn't be, maybe myself included. No, you're absolutely correct. This was coming from a place of passion and love for our university. We joke around, former past president Brian W. Peterson. Yes, I was student body president many years ago. And by virtue of that position, I was a UCF Board of Trustee member. So I have a fairly unique perspective on the way the university system runs, the way UCF runs, the way athletics, the athletics department runs. So a lot of what I said in frustration is because, I just maybe don't necessarily agree with the way things are sitting right now. Now, to be fair, that was some time ago. I don't have the inside track to what athletics is doing. I'm not, on conference calls with Terry once a week and doing all these fun things. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I see what the rest of us see, what you and I see, Adam, which is what athletics, trickles out to us and gives us the information, or the Scott Frost pressers that we get, once a week or so. So some of that frustration perhaps lies in the fact that, we don't see what's going on behind the scenes, and we're kind of left to fill the gap with our own imagination. It's just, sometimes it's okay to be frustrated and to air your grievances and have dialogue. I think that's healthy from a fan's perspective.
Well, let's break down some of the dialogue that it was, Brian. So I kind of want to walk through
Sure.
systematically each of the different points that I think people are frustrated about, and kind of where
Sure.
we are, right? And as you mentioned, this started off on signing day, which was Wednesday, right? So National Early Signing Day. Every school has the opportunity to ink players to sign out of the high school classes. This is typically a year that's full of excitement, or rather an event that's full of excitement every year, because you don't know who's coming to your school. You think you got these people. There's late flips, right? Everyone kind of, always kind of freaks out, and you're watching Instagram videos of guys with hats on tables, right? It's the rite of passage for all of us college football fans. That's been muted over the last couple of years, not just at UCF, but across the board, because now these kids are signing a rev share agreements in advance. So a lot of these things are already kind of baked and signed and understood. So this is kind of muted at a lot of places. And I think a lot of folks have lend voice to that. But UCF signs a class on Wednesday that consists of 13 players. A smaller class by any reasonable measure, probably one of the smallest, if not the smallest class UCF has ever signed. Now, some schools are going ham. I saw West Virginia signed like 41 players, right? Yep. UCF signing 13 players. And the reason that is, Brian, what we were told is they want to save some spots and some dollars for more established players that they may get out of the portal. So they were not going to go heavy on this class. They wanted to sign some key pieces, but they weren't necessarily going to go absolutely wild and sign a bunch of kids, right? Because the way the ranking systems work, when you sign fewer players, your valuation from rivals and 24/7 and On3 is a little bit lower. So because of this, UCF ranked 15 out of 16 in the Big 12. I think in somewhere in the 80-85 range. I'm not sure where it all landed on some of these boards, right? So well below. Obviously, there's only like 60-something Power 4 programs. So we're in the territory of, we're in the group of 6 at this point in time, Brian. So I think that was the first part where people were frustrated, which was, what is this class about? I'm used to seeing 20, 25 guys. I'm used to seeing a bunch of 4-stars. I'm used to being excited about this. And I think a lot of people miss that opportunity. I will say this in defense of UCF. I think the signing day stuff is not just a UCF problem. I think it's become a college football problem. And so
Indeed.
I don't think it's necessarily that UCF isn't doing certain things here and there. Could they be doing things better? We'll get into that in a second. But I do think that's the first part, Brian, is everyone was kind of underwhelmed at the number of players UCF signed and the rating and the evaluation that was given to that class by some of the national publications and some of the recruiting services out there.
So here's the thing. This is where fans become, fanatics. You and I understand that UCF was going to sign a much smaller class than we had seen traditionally. And as a result of that, maybe not on average, the ranking per player as compared to some of the other programs are out there is probably higher than some of the other programs, but the overall ranking is lower purely because we only signed 13 players, whereas you've got a team like West Virginia, who was the number one signing class, had 40 plus players that they signed out of high school. So we're in a time where we're seeing this shift where a lot of schools are signing less high school guys and they're going into the portal for the, to backfill some of the other positions that they need. So there's a dynamic change that's going on within the sport. Now, that doesn't mean that it felt any better for us to see ourselves second to last, only ahead of Oklahoma State in the rankings for the Big 12. That's still a tough pill to swallow, even though we understand why. But that does put pressure on UCF now to have to go out and find these guys in the portal. This is something you and I have talked about in the past. We've got to find a way to go find quality talent in the portal and bring them to UCF. So even though we understand that there's a reason behind it, it still takes some adjustment. It still takes some frustration, especially on a day that you're used to celebrating the future of UCF. Like, oh, we got all these great players in. How many 4-stars did we get? We almost got a 5-star, even in the Gus era. I mean, we were, near the top 25 of all college football programs with some of these high school classes that we signed. So it's a tough pill to swallow in that regard. It's tough to see the program so far below, even though we understand why. But that still leaves a lot of unknown. And that's the scary part about all of this, right? Is that now we have to go out and we have to perform in the portal and find some guys to make sure that we don't, stumble here down the road for the 2026 season and beyond.
Well, this is where it becomes, if there's something you want to be critical of as a fan, I think this is an opportunity where you can be critical if you want to. One, you can look at this list of players and say, I don't know if these guys are any good. And I think that's true of any high school recruiting class. Last year, we all thought we had a great class. And I think I saw like 5 of the 18 still remain at UCF, right? So all the kids we were excited about last year aren't even here anymore, right? And now I know coaching change, yada, yada, yada. But that's a big part of this, right? I'm not this 13 player list, Brian. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody out there knows whether or not this is a good class or not. We've never seen these kids play a single down of college football. So I'm not going to argue or debate whether or not this is the worst class ever, the best class ever, because candidly, we don't know. We've seen all this before where we think we have a kid that's highly recruited, highly rated, comes in and is terrible. And vice versa. We're like, where did this kid come from? He's awesome. Right. So I don't know if these kids are any good or not. Right. I think there's some pieces on this team you can build on. Right. You've got 2 quarterbacks. I think Rocco Marriott is somebody that UCF's going to put a lot of stock in. I think you got 2 guys and speed guys, Kaj Baker, Art Lewis, who I think UCF skill position guys in this Frost offense. He's talked a lot about wanting fast guys. He's got 2 fast guys, undersized, 5'7", 5'9", respectively, but he's got some speed guys there. Kind of a project, and Alhassan Idrisu is coming off a knee injury. So there are some guys in this class that you look at and go, okay, I can see how this could really work out. But like every high school recruit, there is a coin flip of a percentage that they're going to be great. I think there's a very few percentage of college athletes that come into football that you go, this is going to be the guy. And I don't know that we know that. So that's really, put that to the side. I think the strategic element here is Scott Frost said at the press conference, why waste our money signing high school kids that we don't know if they can play? We're going to put our resources into the portal. Now, if you want to be critical as a fan of that, that's up to your opinion, right? You might say that's a terrible strategic decision. You should build from within. You should get talent in here from the high school ranks. You should build it up the right way. Don't go relying on these one-year rentals, Brian. I think there's an element of that, too, that was at play here where Frost was pretty blunt about why am I going to spend money on high school kids? I don't know if they can play or not. And I think that's a deviation from strategy because that's never how it has to be. But I think now that's what Scott is saying. So if you as a fan are out there hearing that, I can understand if you hear that and go, I don't agree with that philosophy. I don't agree that that's the right philosophy. And only time will tell if that's the right philosophy. But I think, Scott, and I assume he's in lockstep with athletics and his coaching staff, is aligned that they think the best thing to do right now is to invest their money, their capital, their dollars into the portal versus high school. Again, we can agree or disagree, but I think that's the decision a lot of fans maybe are also having a hard time coming to grips with.
I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the proper balance, right? How much stock do you put into these guys to get out of the portal versus how much stock do you put in high school players that you're going to bring in and hopefully develop for the future? So you're going to have to strike a balance somewhere. And I think a lot of programs are still trying to figure out what that balance is. You have seen programs such as Clemson and Dabo who like refuse to adopt the portal system and they only go after high school players and they bring in and they develop. Where's Clemson been this year? They seem to have been part of that experiment that hasn't shown that that is a system that can sustain itself over time and work. So I think that there's going to be a balance. I think that 2026 is going to be a year where Scott Frost is probably going to have to lean more on the portal than he would like to do. I don't know if it's, in the future, if we're looking at a system that's maybe 50-50 portal guys, 50-50 high school guys, or, maybe it's 45 and 65. I'm not sure, 45-55, excuse me. I'm not sure what the correct balance is there, but I think that a lot of schools are still trying to figure that out. This happens to be one of those years where, especially for UCF, this is kind of the first time we're seeing, I don't want to say a neglection of high school guys, but a significantly smaller class of high school guys coming in and a heavier reliance on the portal. So that is a bit of a gamble in some ways because you're putting all of your eggs into one basket. So when I say that vibes aren't high, it's because it's unknown, right? We don't know what to expect. We don't know what to your point, we don't know what to expect out of these high school guys. And with the Gus high school recruits, that was a problem, right? We had a lot of 4-star guys coming in. We were in a, really good high school recruiting class, but then a lot of those guys didn't pan out. So now we're kind of flipping the other way and we're going to go heavy in the portal. That can also lead to players not panning out, right? So I guess we'll have to see, but the unknown is it's a worrisome thing for UCF fans to have to deal with, to not understand, where we're going, what the plan is, and how it's ultimately going to work out.
A couple of things there. One, I need to check if neglection is a word. Two, but yeah, I think that's the part where people are uncomfortable, right? I think that's the part where people are going, wait a minute, this is different than we've seen. And some are looking at this and saying UCF's taking a big gamble. They're taking a big gamble on not building their program from within, building from the local high schools. I think Trace asked the question of Scott Frost. 5 of these 13 kids are from Florida. None of those 5 are from sort of that mid-central Florida area that, we typically want to put a fence around, right? So all of this feels really, really different, really, really unique. And I think there's no guarantee what's going to work. But I think if you're a fan, you're like, man, this feels really, really different. So I'll say this. So let me ask you this question just to play devil's advocate for a second, right?
Sure.
You, me, everybody else that dons black and gold and cheers for the Knights. The one mandate we've had over the last couple of seasons is we just need to win. I don't care what we got to do. Let's go and win. We need to win games. Scott got here, wins 5 games. What do we all say? He's got to win. We got to get to 6. We got to get to 7. We got to get this thing back where it needs to be, right? None of us are operating with any level of patience, right? And that's fine. I think we're allowed to do that. So if I'm Scott Frost, and again, I don't think he's hearing it, but let's say he's hearing this, right? What's the fastest way to get your program into a winning position? To wait a year or two to develop high school kids and hope that they pan out? Or do you go to the portal and try to build a roster that way and say, I need to get some wins on the win column here. I need to get better than 5 wins. Everybody's telling me that that's the expectation around here. I got to get to a bowl. I got to get 5. I got to get 6. I got to get 7. I got to get 8, whatever the number is. What's the way that you would do that? The way you'd probably do that is not by going and signing 30 high school kids and hoping that you can build this thing up in 2 years. That's kind of the 2017 model. Unfortunately, in 2025, if his mandate is, Scott, you better win now, dude, because we're all watching you and we all took a chance on you and you better win. Isn't that the way you'd go about doing it? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying we're telling him to go win. Doesn't that make sense that that's the path he might go down if he's trying to accomplish what it is that everyone's telling him he has to accomplish?
I wonder how much of this is being led by Terry. I mean, with all defense of Scott Frost, he just got here, right? He didn't go 4-8 last season. That was a prior coach that was, hired by Terry. And we're on this stretch now, as you've alluded to, where we haven't had a winning season in a couple of years now. The UCF fan base is getting impatient. And I wonder how much of this is being led by Scott Frost, who obviously has an incentive to win now, and he's trying to build a culture. So I'm sure that he's got a say in this. But I wonder how much of this is also Terry, who knows he's been the athletic director for X number of years now. And a lot of fans are not happy with the way college football for UCF has kind of happened over the last few years. So I wonder how much of that leads into his comments saying, hey, you know what, we're going to be going heavy in the portal because he wants to win now as well. Obviously, Scott Frost wants to win. He probably understands more so than you or I do what it takes to put together a college football roster. So I'm sure that he's got a say in that, and that's why he went out and got some of these high school players. But I wonder how much of that is being led in athletics overall, as opposed to just Scott Frost saying, look out, we need to go to the portal now. I'm sure Scott Frost does feel the need to go to the portal because, he had 70 plus new players come in and we've got transfers going out. And he's now had a year to evaluate the team and see what our deficiencies are. But regardless, it's going to be interesting to see the way this develops. But as a UCF fan, it's tough to be patient, even though that, we kind of have to get through these growing pains, but it's tough to do.
Well, again, all of this is new and different, a different approach, a different philosophy, right? I think it'd be interesting. One thing I want to track, obviously the portal is not open yet, so we don't know this. But if you're Scott Frost and you're saying, I want to rebuild this thing back up, I want to bring the culture back, I want to bring UCF back, but he also knows he has to win now. I'm curious, if he goes in the portal, how many guys does he go after that only have 1 year remaining versus guys that have multiple years remaining, right? That if you can get a kid like a Lewis Carter who had 2 years of eligibility left when UCF grabbed him in the portal, you feel better about, okay, if this works out, I can have this player for multiple years now. I think if you have a kid for 2 years, that's probably the duration you're going to have him. I think 2 years is going to become the norm in terms of the amount of time you spend at a college, right? So I think we'll learn some of that through the portal. But I understand for the frustration side and the optics of looking at this, saying this was a failure of recruiting. We didn't put our effort into it. What are we doing? I think you said we punted on this. We neglected this. If you look at the list and you feel that way, again, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. We don't know if any of these kids can play or not yet. We could go 13 for 13 here and go, this was the class that brought UCF back. Or we could go, this was a wasted of a class. None of us know that yet, but I understand the frustration about this is different and this is a strategic move UCF is clearly making that we don't yet know if it'll work out. And I understand where there's some consternation there, Brian. I think the other thing about the signing day press conference is the Scott Frost demeanor. Right. I think a lot of folks were a little bit hesitant to really fall in love with this class because Scott himself was pretty monotone and pretty subdued during his signing day press conferences. Right. We're all used to coaches coming out and, hey, we signed the best guys ever. And it's a lot of rah stuff. Right. That's not Scott Frost to begin with. He's kind of always been a very monotone, very even keeled kind of guy, but he certainly didn't pound the table and jump up and down and go, look at this recruiting class. And I do think some people were a little bit surprised that he didn't spend more time talking about individual players. He didn't talk about the class in general. And so I do think he and the day was also impacted by some of Scott's demeanor when he was kind of talking and introducing kids at the press conference.
Yeah, it's we've gone through a number of head coaches over the past decade now, right? And we've gone from Heupel and the Heupel translator, where he just says the same thing over and over again, to Gus, who's going to tell you, yep, we're going to compete for championships right away and we're going to win, to Scott Frost, which is kind of more of the, I'm going to give you my honest opinion type, but it's not necessarily going to be rah or get you excited. I'm going to tell you the way it is. So I think you're right. I think that when discussing the signing class for these high school guys that are coming in, he didn't really give us a lot to be excited about, right? It was just kind of his standard press conference, hey, we signed some guys and here are my thoughts on some of them, and some of them are great, and we're building towards something, and they didn't give you a lot to look forward to. I had to go back and do a lot of research on the guys that we signed once signing day was over, because I didn't get a whole lot of these guys from Scott Frost during his presser. It didn't blow me away with the excitement. And that just kind of goes back to the vibes and the feelings that we have after coming off this 5-7 season and having more uncertainty about where the future's taking us.
Yeah, I think you add in a lower number class and obviously a lower rated class, and then Frost with a little bit less energy perhaps and less excitement about this class. I think that factored into a lot of the conversation. Again, that's kind of Frost's demeanor though. That's he's
Yeah.
always been a little bit that way. But I think the other piece that got a lot of folks kind of interested in talking was the quote that was kind of pulled out of the larger press conference, and really probably the only thing people remember about this press conference now, and you and I are talking 5 or 6 days later, is the phrase "college football is broken right now." And so Scott Frost says that obviously in response to a question, and that got a lot of people talking. Yep. And there's a couple schools of thought here, Brian. There's some people who are like, hey, I don't care. You keep telling me this. We know it. Like, stop lamenting the problem, and let's just move forward. Right. I'll say a couple things. One, you said this already. Scott Frost at least is going to give you an honest answer. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that we're not going to go 1-0 and I'm an old high school football coach, and we're not going to get all these cliches. So
play in the
I
parking lot.
Appreciate that Scott is going to give you an honest answer. Two, to be fair to Scott, he was asked that question. Somebody asked him, like, what do you think about college football right now and how it's going, right? So he was asked the question. I respect to give an honest answer. My initial reaction, Brian, was kind of similar, I think, to a few different people, which was like, man, just stop talking about this. Like, we get it. But I've had more time to kind of think about it here. And some of this is formed by our good friend Robert Aronoff from Nice 247 was at the Big 12 championship and actually asked Brett Yormark the same question and asked for a reaction to it. And at that point, it kind of hit me like, I guess if somebody has to lead the charge for change, if you never talk about the thing that's the problem, then it never gets brought into conversations. No one ever addresses it. No one ever asks a commissioner about it. No one ever starts a dialogue about it. So do I think that Scott Frost is one man that's going to change college football himself? I do not. But I can respect that he wants to continue to make sure that he's sharing his perspective on it when asked. Now, I will say all that to say, maybe signing day wasn't the best time for that conversation, right? Maybe that's one presser. You leave that out, or you gloss that question over a little bit, and you maybe give a little more shine to the kids who signed with you. But I understand that I don't think Scott's going to be that guy. He's going to be the guy that's going to give you the answer. So I understand if you're as a fan, you're rubbed the wrong way about it. I understand if it comes across like complaining and whining and cry and cope and all those other cool things people say on the internet. But I respect that he gave you an honest answer, and I respect that he at least answered the question. But I would say maybe save that salvo for another press conference, not the one where you're supposed to be introducing to your fans the 13 newest Knights who are going to make an impact in the program. Maybe save it for another press conference.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I commend Scott Frost for his honesty all season long. It's been, quite refreshing to hear some of the answers that I feel like he has answered truthfully and not given that coach speak answer. And a lot of times it has to do with the state of college football, right? When he first came back to UCF in one of his earlier pressers, he had mentioned, that things had changed and perhaps alluded to the fact that some of the things that had changed maybe weren't for the best. And I'll give it to Scott Frost. I mean, college football has been his life, right? He played at Nebraska. He won a national championship for them. He's been around college football for pretty much all of his life. And so he's going to know the, college football world better than you or I will. That being said, we've heard it at this point, right? This is not the first time he's brought, or the question has been raised, or the point has been brought up and given a microphone for him to kind of voice his opinion about the way things are right now. And I don't disagree with Scott Frost at all. Okay. I come from UCF, which is, a former G5 program that was never given the benefit of the doubt and always had an uphill battle and always had to deal with, the SEC looking down at lesser programs and all of this nonsense. Okay. So I don't disagree with him at all. I agree with him. I think the system does need to be fixed in a lot of ways. It's great that we're paying players now, but there's also no regulation to it. All right. There's things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And, players are getting paid more than other players. And, there's a lot of inconsistency. You've got teams like Texas Tech front loading money to buy their players. And then you've got UCF trying to play catch up. So the whole system is out of whack. So he's not wrong, but as a UCF fan base, I think we're tired of hearing that, especially when it seems like it's a crutch against why we haven't done well, or perhaps why we won't do well in the future. And maybe that's me putting my thoughts on his thoughts and not really hearing what he's saying. And maybe I'm, trying to look ahead and say, oh, he's already using this as an excuse. If you're an outsider, if you're not a UCF fan, you probably just hear Scott Frost whining, right?
Yeah.
You probably don't care. You don't have the history of UCF behind you. So you don't understand that underdog persona that UCF has. You just hear Scott Frost whining. Either way, it's not a good look anymore, right? We're tired of hearing it from the UCF side, and everybody outside of college or outside of UCF is tired of hearing about it. So not the best time. Let's talk about the players that we signed instead. And you mentioned Brett Yormark, who was asked about the question, and that's fine. Dialogue is good. This is how we get things, to be talked about and perhaps worked on further down the road. He threw Scott Frost under the bus. He's like, college football is not broken. I love Scott Frost, but it's not broken, and we're working towards it. So perhaps this is an opportunity for UCF to go ahead and turn this narrative from, look, college football is broken, to, you know what, UCF is going to do everything we can to provide for our players in the current system and find ways to, work within the confines of the system to make sure that we put together the best, put a positive spin on it, as opposed to just coming across as complaining about the way things are now. That's all that I was thinking.
Yeah, I think, if the full entirety of that question, of that quote, and Scott went on for a couple of minutes with that answer, he does at the end of it come back around to, we're doing everything we can here. I've got support from Terry, the administration, but maybe you reverse the order of those things. You go, hey, before I get there, listen, we're okay here. Like, I feel good about it. But again, I'm asking Scott Frost to be something he might not be. And he's not a cheerleader. He's not going to be a rah-rah guy. And so I think that lended to some of the angst and some of the concern people had on Wednesday after the signing day presser, which was like, wait a minute, tell me more about this Rocco Marriott guy. Like, he threw 70 touchdowns in high school. Like, tell me more about him. Is he going to play? And that wasn't the conversation. But again, not all that to Scott's fraud. And I'll tell you this, as somebody who has to sit across from coaches and players at times and ask questions, when I know I have a subject that's going to answer a question, I'm going to ask it more likely. And that's the other problem Scott has, is he's going to answer that question. When someone says, Scott, tell me more if you think about NIL, he's not going to be like, well, I don't want to talk about that. He's going to give you an answer. So that emboldens you as an interviewer, as somebody who's asking the questions, to go, I'm going to get a quote out of this guy. Let me ask him the question about this. And I'm not accusing anybody in the media of doing that. I'm just saying, when I know that a subject's not going to talk about something, I don't even ask the question, because I know they're just going to give me the Heisman and move on. Frost isn't that kind of guy. Maybe he's got to figure that out. Again, I'm okay with him trying to lead the charge. I just do that at your next presser, right? Or don't do that when you're getting to your signing day class.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to remember, he's a football coach. He's not a PR guy. This is, and again, I commend him for giving us an honest answer. And again, I agree with him. I think the system does need to be tweaked. It does need to be fixed, but it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time for that to be a topic of conversation on, the presser, when you're talking about the future of the program and all these great high school players that we have coming in.
I also think, by the way, Brett Yormark just kind of gave a standard answer, right? I just found it ironic. He's standing in front of a helmet of BYU and Texas Tech, two schools that have obviously very publicly said we're going to do certain things. And he's like, I don't like circumvention. No, don't do that around here. While he's got like BYU money like falling out of his ears, but we'll get to that later. I think so. Let's zoom out a little bit now, Brian. Okay, so signing day comes and goes. I see this as a three-act play rather, right? So act one was signing day, right? And if you out there are listening and reading and watching and going, hey, I don't feel good about where we are after act one, again, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. You can certainly feel that way, and there's evidence to support those feelings. We had Chris Boyle on Sons Live this week, Brian. He follows high school recruiting as good or better than anybody I know.
He does.
He gave this class a C-. So if you look at the first act of this play and go, that's a C-, I don't like what we did here, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. You very well may be right, and you may be underwhelmed by that first act, right? But let's not forget, Brian, there are two other acts that are coming up that are equally as important, if not more important, for Scott Frost and the staff. One of them is going on right now, and it's part of what you touched on as well, and kind of your thoughts on social media this week. So Act 2 is player retention and player evaluation. So keep the guys that you want to have on this roster. Evaluate your roster. Tell us or think about who should be here. Think about who shouldn't be here. There was angst early on. Wade and Charles, the true freshman wide receiver who had a pretty decent freshman year. And it's emoji season, right? Tweets an emoji.
It is emoji season. Yep.
We all flip out, and all of a sudden there's rumors going around, and the next day he tweets out, "Night Nation, let's run it back," right? So it appears that has settled itself. I think the challenge is we may not know what's happening behind the scenes. Again, I can tell you all what I shared with you a while back. I know several of the guys on defense have already been approached about staying on this roster. I know UCF feels good that they have deals in place with a lot of those core guys. Now, anything can be broken. Any deal can be broken. I think Georgia's suing a player right now, right? So I'm not going to say they're fully Knights until I see them on the field in 2026. But I think they feel good about some defensive players. Now, we may not know that right now because a lot of these guys are not releasing information. They're not making graphics. If you want to read into anything, over the weekend, Raising Cane's, a famous chicken restaurant, is coming to UCF. They had a 4 players that came out are going to be endorsers for the new franchise opening up near campus.
Yep.
Lewis Carter, Antoine Jackson, who am I forgetting? Preston Cushman for offensive lineman for reasons I can't think of. And there's one other guy whose name I can't think of off the top of my head. Braden Marshall. So those 4 guys are Cane ambassadors. Does that mean they're coming back? How long are those deals? I don't know, but it would stand to reason you would think you'd have a favorable thing on that front. So if I'm telling you that you feel good about some of these guys coming back, Brian, that's the second phase of this process, is holding on to the players you want to keep and seeing who goes in the portal. As you and I are talking on Sunday, I don't know that we've gotten really hurt by the portal entries right now. 2 quarterbacks, Taven Jackson, Ja'Cory Brown, which candidly aren't surprises. A couple of kids who were buried on the depth chart. I think Kylan Fox may be the name that probably surprised people the most, Brian. But so Act 2 of this is, can you retain the guys that you want to retain? And can you kind of reshape your current roster and either figure out where you need help, where you need to get rid of guys, where you need different players. And so far, we don't know the grade on this yet. But so far, UCF hasn't, quote unquote, lost anybody, I think, that is of concern to them just yet.
Yeah. First things first, if you guys haven't listened to that interview with Chris Boyle, definitely go ahead and check it out. It's a great interview. He follows recruiting much closer than the rest of us do.
Much better. Yes.
And he really has some good insight into some of these players and where UCF ranks. And I think his point about us, ranking about a C- is fair. I think that the class has room for improvement, is what he said, right? There's another player that they're potentially looking at in the later signing period.
Tyron Horns, who is a wide receiver out of Sarasota, could be a signee for UCF. They feel good about him, but 4-star kid, was a UCF commit, flipped to Michigan State, decommitted there. UCF, I think, feels good about their chances. He's going to sign sometime in January.
Yeah, so Chris Boyle said that if he does sign, then perhaps that C- gets bumped up a bit. But again, go check out that interview. He talks at length about some of these guys. Second thing, when I sent that tweet out, part of that frustrated tweet that I sent out earlier in the week was before a lot of these guys that we were talking about when it comes to retention had actually, said, let's run it back. So, the Wade and Charles, for example, was one of the guys that I had on my checklist that we wanted to keep and we wanted to retain going into the 2026 season. So, at the time that tweet went out, that was emoji season. So Wade and Charles had not said, let's run it back. Instead, he had come out and he had said, question mark emoji or thinking emoji.
I think it's thinking emoji.
I think that was thinking emoji. Yeah, it was thinking emoji. And there was a buddy of his who had just entered the portal or announced that I guess he was intending to enter the portal, which had a lot of people, myself included, concerned that perhaps Waden was going to go with him. And on top of it, we had heard reports that Taven Jackson is planning to enter the portal, and there were several other players. Now, say what you want about Taven Jackson and his time at UCF as a quarterback, but he's our starting quarterback, you guys. So until we have somebody to replace him, he is the starting quarterback, at least for the 2025 season that we had. I mean, we haven't seen anybody come in to replace him. So there was a lot of these guys and names starting to enter the portal that was concerning if you were a UCF fan. I know a lot of people weren't, like I said, high on Taven and perhaps are happy to see him go if he enters the transfer portal. But again, that's part of this unknown, right? We want to be retaining guys, not necessarily seeing them enter the portal without somebody to replace them with. Obviously, since then, Waden has said he's going to, he's planning to return, and the Canes chicken deal has led us to believe that several players are going to be coming back, the Braden Marshalls and Luce Carters and all that fun stuff. But at the time that tweet was sent out, we had a lot of unknowns at the time. And that is not something that if you're looking at Act 2, as you said, Adam, that you want to be hearing as a UCF fan. You want to see us retaining players. Now, to your point, this is, a football game is 60 minutes, right? So you can't panic after the first quarter. You can't panic just because you've got a smaller signing class or because guys are entering the portal. You got to play this thing through. But it's a little unnerving to not know what's going to happen in the second and third act.
Yeah. Well, I think, similar to, a class you took at UCF, Brian, like you have multiple tests throughout the year and then you kind of get your final grade, right? So if you want to grade UCF a C- on Act 1, fair enough, right? I'll take Chris Boyle's grade. He's smarter than us, right? Act 2 here, right now, great unknown. We don't know yet who's coming back. We haven't seen announcements. Again, you've heard rumors of people who are probably coming back, but it's not my place to introduce news that I'll let kids and universities figure that out, right? So you still have to give it a grade for Act 2, right? Let's say we retain a lot of the defense, Brian. Let's say we retain, I think there's probably two key pieces on offense that we want to retain, if I'm being honest, and that's Wade and Charles, who, again, posted, let's run it back, and that's Dylan Wade, who I don't know that we've heard from yet. I don't know that we know much from yet, right? So if I told you we retain those two, we retain some of those core guys on defense, the Raising Canes guys, right? Yep. And some of the core guys on defense, all of a sudden your grade for Act 2 feels a little better, right? Maybe you feel like you got to be at this point, right? Yeah, you lost Taven Jackson as your starting quarterback, and that's a blow. And yeah, maybe you lost some other guys that may kind of pop up and hit the portal that are names, but maybe that becomes a different grade, right? And then Act 3, Brian, is really where I think this is going to be decided, where your final exam, if you will, is what do you do in the portal, right? So you're gonna figure out your roster. You're gonna get some positions cleaned out the way you need to, and now you've got to go identify players that can come in and fit your culture, fit your team, fit what it is you're looking for, right? So Act 3 of this play, which again is still, by the time you and I are talking, still at least a month away. I think there's still opportunity for this entire off-season cycle to be thought of differently. But I understand after Act 1, if you looked at this and said, what in the earth are we doing here? This is not going to work out. And I will say, listen, it's clear that there's a strategy here. The strategy is clearly we want to build this thing up quickly. We think we can win games. I think Scott said something like, we think we could win games now. We thought we could win games in 25. We fell short. We don't think we're too far off from that. So it's clear they want to try to make a good jump right now, grab some players and turn this thing around as quickly as they can, right? That's a strategic decision. Just like every decision that you make in life, if you want to invest in a stock, if you want to, you want to sell your house now, whatever, you want to lease your car, it's a gamble. It could pay off and you could be looking like a genius, or it could backfire and you're calling your accountant, Brian Peterson, like, can I write this off? And UCF may be in that spot right now where they've said, all right, this is our strategy. And all of us out there may go, whoa, this feels a little different. I don't know if I like this. This doesn't feel like the right way to do it. I don't know that any of us have that answer yet, but it's clear Scott's in this staff is doing that. And it's going to be a gamble. It's going to be a gamble. And if UCF falls in their face next year, I think there will be a lot of questions to ask. There'll be a lot of pressure brought to bear if UCF doesn't make some improvements next year based on the way you're looking at. Because again, just like we said this year, you walked away and you said, who do I feel good about? Who do I feel good about building around? It was everybody on defense. The offense you didn't feel good about. So it's a gamble, right? It's a strategic gamble to say we want to build this thing up. We think we can quickly get the right pieces in here and make some noise in 2026. And we're going to bring along some of these young guys and very specific spots where we need them to fill in the gaps. But we're going to do it this way. This may be the genius move of all time, and it may pay off like other schools have had it pay off, or Scott Frost is going to be continuing to fight the allegations after the 2026 season if this doesn't work out.
Scott Frost, to his credit, has been pretty consistent with the message that we're almost there, right? We're right there. We're so close to being a good football team, and we just got to make some adjustments and get the right guys in here. And we're building this culture, and we're doing it the right way, and we're close, right? That's what he kept saying all season long, is we're close. And maybe you guys need to get the Heupel translator out and figure out what he's really saying, because if he's not saying that, I'm not sure what he's saying. But this is a gamble, right?
Hold on, not to interrupt you, but I think knowing what I know now and knowing what that comment is, what I think I hear is we just don't have enough of the right guys right now. I only got a few more guys. We could be better. And I think that's what he's looking at, saying we're close. If I only had, and again, I'm not trying to defame anybody. If I only had a better offensive lineman, if I only had a couple of receivers who, were a little bit better, if I only had maybe more consistency at quarterback, I feel like I could have gotten his 8 or 9 wins. And I think he's thinking that and saying, let me go get those things then, and we'll be there. That's the gamble I think he's taking when he says, I think we're close. I think he's basically looking at a few key spots going, gosh, if I could just block anybody, like, I'd be good. If I had a quarterback that could hit that seam route, we'd be rolling here. And I think maybe that's what he's saying. Again, gamble, but I think that may be what he's saying.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's exactly what he's saying. And I think he legitimately believes that as well, unless he's just a really good car salesman and we're all buying into it. But I think that he honestly, we have no reason to think he's lied to us so far. He seems pretty candid in all of his answers. So I think that we can believe what he's saying, which is he feels like they're close, right? They're going to turn this corner here before too long. And this portal period is going to be vital to them doing that. It's the unknown, right? We don't know until we know yet. And like you talked about, a lot of these players, and it's not our job to have breaking news and do all of these things. The players will tell us, when the portal time comes, and we'll figure out all these pieces. But as fans, it's tough, because when we don't know, we start to make up our own answers in our head, and we start to, create rumors and think, oh, because so-and-so entered, I bet so-and-so is going to enter now, or we don't know what's
following somebody on social media.
Exactly,
I bet they're thinking about leaving.
Exactly. Right. How many times have I gone over to somebody's Instagram and said, oh, they took all the UCF stuff off their Instagram. They obviously must be leaving. Right. Famously, Dylan Gabriel did that at one point, and that was a whole to do. So it's unknown. The way I kind of analogize it in my head is, I don't like to fly. And it's not that I'm afraid of heights. It's because I'm a control freak, and I'm not the one flying the plane. I'm 30 rows in the back looking ahead saying, I don't know what's going on in the cockpit. And that's what I feel like we're at right now.
I think you want to know what's going on.
That's how we are with UCF football right now, right? Sure. We can only see when somebody goes past the window and says, I'm, potentially entering the transfer portal, or, hey, we signed these guys over here. But we can't see in the cockpit. We don't know what's going on in front of us, and we're just kind of along for the ride. And I hate that. I hate not being in control, not being able to know what's going on. So when that happens, people start to make up things in their head, and the sky's falling, and we're so-and-so players leaving, and we're not doing the right thing, and maybe UCF Athletics should come out and give us a little more information, and maybe we'll see that once we get into the portal period of time. But it's tough. It's tough because we don't know what they're doing, what they're thinking, what Scott Frost, we're not in his office looking at the board of players that he's trying to get, and what spots he's prioritizing. It's a little nerve-wracking from that perspective.
Well, and here's the challenge, to stick with your plane analogy for a second, right? So if you are on that plane, you could say to yourself, this plane is going to crash. We are going down. And there's evidence here that you could think that that's actually accurate, that this thing is going to go right to the ground, right? Or you could be the positive and go, hey, you know what? Flight just took off. We still got some time before we get to my destination. This thing's going to level out at some point, right? Or, hey, we're fine. We're up here, right? So I think that's the challenge, is there's evidence on either side. And if you want to be one that says our signing class wasn't great, our head coach had a crappy attitude that day, I guess everything's falling apart, right? Or you go, hey, wait a minute, hold on a second. It's one press conference, it's one day. There's still 40-something days left in this whole cycle. Let's see where the plane lands. You can be that guy too, right? And I think there's evidence enough for both that to be out there right now, Brian. So let's hope the plane isn't crashing. Let's hope the sky's not falling. But I don't blame anybody out there if right now they have some skepticism, because UCF hasn't given us a lot of positivity the last couple of seasons that we can kind of hang our hat on. So I understand if you're of that skeptical nature. I understand if you're of that nature of saying, well, wait a minute, I don't understand what we're doing around here. And maybe after the third act, we can all sit down and go, okay, did we get it? Did we feel good about where we are, or did the plane not land where we're supposed to land? Yeah. Maybe we can do all that, Brian. I do think one other topic I want to bring up with you is one of the new phenomenons was college athletics. And we heard it with Auburn when they hired Alex Golesh. We heard it recently with Kalani Sitake at BYU. We heard it recently with some other openings. I think Virginia Tech did the same with James Franklin. It's this new concept of rev share plus NIL. So there's a rev share cap that you can't spend. It's $20.5 million for all sports. You divvy that up how you see fit as a school. Most schools are doing 75%. When you factor in scholarships and costs, right, call it roughly $15 million, rough math, that you're allowed to essentially allocate to football. But you're hearing reports of someone saying, hey, Alex Golesh has been hired and $30 million of NIL support has been vouched for him, has been put aside for him, right? So this new concept of rev share over that cap, and that coming through NIL, right? And now, because of the way things are in the new agreements, it has to be legitimate third-party NIL. Schools can no longer directly pay athletes through the collective model anymore, Brian. So it has to be legitimate business. But schools are now pledging above rev share cap to their athletes to try to bring them in, right? That's a game. I don't know if UCF right now is prepared or able to play. Now, I understand 15, 20, $30 million is a lot of money, Brian, but I wonder how prepared UCF is. And it makes you kind of wonder, with the kingdom dissolving, everything kind of running in now to the university, is UCF prepared? Is UCF ready? Did athletics, the Terry Mohajir, did they err maybe pulling the kingdom stuff too quickly? I wish I had some answers here, Brian, but I'm just curious your thoughts on kind of where we are now with the new model of, okay, yeah, rev share's fine. Yeah, we're all going to do that. But I'm also going to throw in all this extra money. Now, again, can't be in a contract. They can't be, when I'm recruiting Brian Peterson to play at my school, I can't say, Brian, I've got an NIL deal for you. But I can certainly tell a booster, hey, you know what? If I got a couple kids, I wouldn't mind you throwing NIL their way, right? There's a bunch of wink, wink, nod, nods, Brian. I just wonder how UCF is positioned in that new, and maybe it's not new, candidly, right? Maybe we're naive to say it's new, and that emerging trend that we're seeing that's now more
talked about. So let's back up a second. Let's clarify. You have what used to be NIL before we got to this rev share point of where we are right now. So originally, NIL was name, image, likeness. It was being held by collectives, and that was all done outside of the university system. So that was all private collectives that were organizing themselves to gather money and contracts, I guess, for players to go out and take advantage of their name, image, and likeness, okay? The system changed in the last few years, and now we have the rev share program. And the rev share program is done in-house through athletics departments. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's $20.5 million is the rev share limit for every university in the NCAA, meaning they cannot spend more than $20.5 million per year per university on their student athletes. Now, we had the Kingdom. The Kingdom was our NIL program that was up for 2 years-ish. And eventually, when this rev share program was announced, the university system basically, or the university athletics department basically ate up the Kingdom and closed it down and said, look, we've got rev share now, we don't need NIL. What Adam has explained is that a lot of these programs, the Auburns and these other bigger programs out there, have their cap that they're going to use for rev share, that $20.5 million, but they also have an independent, outside of the athletics department, NIL type collective that is also working to put together contracts for some of these players for their name, image, and likeness. So the question is, did we surrender the Kingdom too quickly because we assumed everything was going to be under rev share? And some of these other programs either did not get rid of their NIL collective and they still have, the system in place to operate some sort of NIL collective, or, perhaps they have the resources to get it back up and running faster than we can. So I think that that's a valid question. I think that if I had to guess, I would say that we probably just assumed that rev share was going to be the new model moving forward, and We were going to have $20.5 million to spend on our athletes, our student athletes, and that was going to be it. And Terry and Brett Yormark of the Big 12 have said, we're going to follow the rules. We're going to make sure that things are done correctly. And that's great. But other programs, the Auburns that you brought up, who just hired the South Florida coach, Alex Golesh, has $20.5 million through the Auburn athletics program. And they also have several other $1 million on top of that through their NIL program. That if you compare to UCF, yes, we've got our rev share program in place, but we don't have the outside NIL collective that's able to support players and kind of incentivize guys to come play for UCF. So it's a great question, and I don't know that we'll ever get an answer as to did we pull the trigger too fast and move one way or the other. And I'm curious to see what the university is going to do as far as trying to get a collective, get some sort of private boosters out there to get the collective reorganized, if you will, in order to to find some extra dollars in the form of name, image, and likeness contracts for these players to incentivize guys to come play for UCF in the football program and the other athletic programs as well, the other sports that we have.
And this is near and dear to your heart, Brian. There was recently a board of trustees meeting, and these are public meetings. You can find this on YouTube. Part of the trustees is a guy named Tom McNamara, who you might not know his name, but you should, because he was the founder of the Kingdom. He was the guy who essentially started the Kingdom back a couple of years ago. He's obviously a trustee member, and he was on the record at this meeting. Brian, have some quotes here. Quote: "Around us, though, the world of rev share and NIL is moving almost fast by the minute, by the day, and trying to get our head around what is the next step in developing a strategy for UCF that is UCF." He later went on to say, "I think coming up with a strategy in athletics that does the funding and auxiliaries through public-private partnerships is on the table. There has to be a direct effort looking at this because we are and have slipped further behind this," right? So many are asking, right. And I was confused early on too, because I was like, wait a minute, I thought we can only spend $20 million, and I thought every deal had to be approved. And Brett Yormark talks about cap circumvention, and it sounds like, again, shocker, the NCAA doesn't have their hands around this, and with every new ruling, and the ruling that we're referring to is the House settlement, which is what essentially got rev share into place, then there becomes the loopholes, or there becomes the ways that are there, right? And so that seems to be the most now public one. And you wonder, how positioned is UCF to play in this game? So if Scott Frost says, "Hey, I've got a player, I've got a home run left tackle that's in the portal right now that wants to come to UCF, and this is what he needs to be paid," are we going to be able to be in the ball game with rev share and then with NIL? Would we have been if we kept the Kingdom, and will we be now? Questions I'll never know the answer to, Brian. I just think it's interesting now as you're seeing more and more of this to kind of see where UCF is positioned, and how to think about where and how UCF is behind, if they are indeed behind. And if, again, you want to be on the plane that's crashing and say, this is never going to work, this is one of those other data points. You go, well, this is exactly why we're not going to fit, because we didn't think about doing this, this, and this.
If I'm on that plane, I hope Trustee McNamara is flying it, or is at least a co-pilot, because he's 100% correct. I think that his words speak truth to the fact that UCF is probably behind the 8 ball at this point, because we no longer have some sort of outside NIL program. And whether that's from lack of foresight or not realizing that this is where we were going to be, 6 months, 12 months after we got rid of the Kingdom, I think that regardless of that, it puts us at a disadvantage because we do not have those resources available. There was an interesting piece that floated around on social media. It was one of the big boosters for Texas Tech that went on and had an interview. Yep. Yeah. And I mean, he pretty much laid out these rules. He's like, look, here's what happened. We saw an opportunity because there weren't, strict rules in place. And we decided that as a group that we were going to get a bunch of boosters together, and we were going to front load all this money, and we were going to essentially take advantage of the system, is what I took away from it. And there was nobody to tell us, no, you can't do that. There was no way, for them to really get caught. And we have seen the success that Texas Tech has reaped as a result of this. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, you want to be ahead of the system, not trying to catch up to the system. And I think that that's what Tom McNamara was saying. And hopefully we're able to find a way to get, some form of organization up and going fairly quickly, so that Frost and the other coaches for the other programs that we have resources beyond just that $20.5 million rev share cap, because it's clear that other universities are going to be going well beyond that.
Yeah, it's proactive versus reactive, right? Like, are you forward thinking? Are you revolutionary? Or are you reacting to what's happening and trying to catch up? And let me be clear. I'm saying, I think you're saying the same. We don't have Texas Tech money. I'm not expecting $25 million to come flying out of the ceiling, right? But does UCF have something that they can at least get in the game and be strategic about key players they want to go after, and how to get guys to essentially hopefully build this roster up? Or are they going to rely solely on rev share and then hope some deals kind of appear, like a Raising Cane's, like a Noble that's been out there before, right? Some guys are doing some protein bars I saw. Like, are they hoping these deals will come organically? Or is there something in the greater Orlando community and the UCF fan base that then you can go, hey, come to UCF, come sign here, here's your rev share amount. And by the way, we have some really interested businesses that would love to talk to you about your services, even though you can't say that's illegal. But do we have that concept? And I think it's interesting hearing McNamara's comments about, hey, we're falling behind. If there's one guy who would know, it would be that guy, right? Yeah. And I just think it's interesting to think about that, Brian. But that gets us to, we'll wrap up with this, thinking of college football and being broken and things that are wrong and not great. The playoff has been announced, Brian. The committee, they met, first of all.
What an exciting day it's been.
Because it seems like these guys got it made, right? But the committee gets together, Brian, and they decide who is going to go into the college football playoff. If you've been living under a rock and you're hearing this for the first time from us, A, I feel bad for you. But B, here's what I can tell you. On a Big 12 note, BYU kicked out. Basically, losing to Texas Tech was the death knell for BYU. They are gone. Losing in the conference championship game wasn't a death knell for Alabama, though. They stayed in. Miami gets in because they win the head-to-head over Notre Dame. Notre Dame kicked out because the ACC is just booty this year. Duke doesn't get in. So basically, no ACC champion gets in. Only Miami and at-large. And you get two group of fives in. James Madison and Tulane are in, Brian. That is your college football playoff bracket. So Alabama, Miami get in. Notre Dame, BYU outside looking in. Two group of five teams. Brian, your reaction to the 2025 college football playoff?
Before we hopped on the show here, I was in a group text with a couple of UCF buddies of mine and some SEC buddies. I won't tell you what school they go to, but they're SEC guys. And of course, the two UCF guys were like, hey, we're so excited that James Madison and Tulane, two group of six programs, got in. This is great. And the SEC guys are like, this is stupid. I can't believe we gave two spots to G6 programs, blah, 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 blah. So first things first, congratulations to James Madison and Tulane. I'm always going to back the little guy. I think that the G6 should have more representation in the playoffs, and I'm always happy to see those types of programs get in. Now, if you want to move on to the much vaunted Alabama program that lost 3 games, including a blowout loss to Georgia in the SEC championship game on Saturday, well, okay, fine. But if you're Kirk Herbstreit, that did not hurt Alabama when it came to getting them into the playoff. But at the same time, BYU, who has one less loss than Alabama, even after losing the conference championship game for the Big 12, did not get in. So I'm scratching my head on that. How can you argue that Alabama should not be punished for losing the conference championship game that they played in, yet BYU does get punished for the conference championship game that they played in? So scratching my head on that. I think that the Big 12 should have been a 2-bid league this year at a minimum. I think that BYU and Texas Tech are by far and away the two best teams in the Big 12. Obviously, they played in the championship game, but I think that they're far and ahead, better than some of these other programs that got in with the help of the patch that's on their jersey. Happy to see Texas Tech obviously get that first round bye. I think that they deserved that. What a shocker it was to see Indiana knock off Ohio State and take the number 1 spot. I have a friend of mine that went to Indiana Law, so he's a UCF grad and an Indiana grad. So he's just thrilled that Indiana is the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. But some interesting comments. I think it's interesting that Notre Dame decided to not play in a bowl game since they were the first program out. They have since announced on Sunday that they will not be participating in a bowl game, which, okay, I think that's a little pouty. I'm not sure that that's probably the route that I would have taken, but I'm not part of the Notre Dame program. When you're a program like Notre Dame, to me, it comes across as a little whiny and pouty that they didn't get their way. Even though they have all the advantages in the world of being Notre Dame to begin with, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I mean, talking about college football is broken, right? Like if you played a conference championship game, like, but then you didn't, like, that's an interesting, like, some people are going to be penalized for that. Some aren't. The committee's answer to the Alabama thing is they played and beat Georgia already. So now they have the best loss, where Texas Tech beat BYU twice. So that's where Alabama gets in, right? And the thing I think is funnier is Notre Dame is ranked above Miami throughout all of the entirety of this college football playoff ranking,
except
right?
for the prior week.
And then it was Miami, right? And then all of a sudden BYU drops out. So Miami moves up, and now they're next to each other. And neither one of them played. And they're like, you know what? Actually, Miami's better. And they flipped them at the like that was true the entire time. Then not just this last week, right? Which is another head scratcher throughout all of this, right? But it's a made for TV event. They got a ton of TV eyeballs. A ton of people are still going to watch this nonsense, and it's still going to be must see television for a lot of folks. So maybe I'm not a TV executive, but we did forget to talk about that actually really quickly. Word was breaking on Sunday from Brett McMurphy that UCF might find themselves as a bowl opportunist based on Kansas State and Iowa State basically declaring they didn't want to play in bowls. They got fined $500K a piece, by the way, for that.
I also disagree with them not wanting to play in a bowl game.
So Brian, pro bowl, however, they opt out, and UCF found themselves on the short list based on APR, academic progress rate, as a school that could be eligible for a bowl game. Brett McMurphy later reports that some other schools figured it out and said that UCF was a school that declined to play in a bowl. So clearly UCF on that list. Clearly contact was made with UCF asking about a bowl, and per Brett McMurphy, UCF has obviously declined that bowl, Brian. Now, again, UCF isn't on the record about this stuff, so this is just conjecture on my part, but I can only assume at this point it's so disadvantageous for a team. You've sent the players home already. You've had exit meetings. You have guys in the portal already. Guys aren't on campus. Finals ended for UCF on Saturday. A lot of people have probably got in their car and went back to wherever they're from. They're not even in the area anymore. Can they even get back in time? So a 5-7 UCF, Brian, had a chance to play in a bowl game. You love you some UCF football like I do. Anytime you can watch, we always talk about, I get 12 of these a year. I want to watch and cherish and enjoy every single solitary one of them. You could add a 13th, Brian. Did you want a 13th UCF game this year?
Okay, a lot to unpack there. First, shame on K-State and Iowa State for not playing in a bowl game. I don't care that your coaches are gone, you're retired, one left for another job. We have a bowl season for a reason. We have the Big 12 represented by certain bowls. You get up and you play. Even Florida came out and played us in the Gasparilla Bowl, and they didn't have their coach.
And I will say quickly,
I don't want to hear any excuses.
Even though Chris Kleiman retired, he could have coached the bowl game. It's one more game. Isn't like he's not around anymore. And Oklahoma State fired Mike Gundy, God knows when, right? Like they had an interim coach. Iowa State, so sure, you have to find an interim coach just like Florida did. You could do that, right? Interim coaches exist for a reason. So Iowa State could have figured that out as well. I agree with you on that.
It's a bad look, I think, for those two programs. Now, that aside, going back to UCF, did I want UCF to play in a bowl game? No, I did not want us to play in a bowl game. I think that, as you've already stated, we have already wrapped up the 2025 season. We've already sent players home. We've done exit interviews with players who are probably leaving the program, and we've wrapped things up. Who knows where, if Brett Yormark called us today and said, hey, I need you to be on the field tomorrow, are we even going to be able to field a team at this point? Probably not. So I think that UCF not playing in a bowl game was probably the correct call. Now, however, I will say some of the reports that were out there was that we were potentially going to play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Now, that did pique my interest a little bit. Who would not want to see Scott Frost get a bucket of mayonnaise dumped on his head if we were able to win that game?
You had us winning that game.
Crazier things have happened. So
okay, good for you.
But yeah, I mean, you can't blame UCF for not playing in a bowl game at this point. The season's wrapped up. I think that the season has sailed, and I have no problem with UCF gracefully bowing out of a bowl at 5-7. I would not want to have to watch that offensive line try and protect Taven Jackson anymore.
Well, is Taven Jackson even going to play in that game?
Would
He's
he
already
even play? That's a
allegedly
good point.
declared to be in the portal, right? Ja'Cory Brown already allegedly declared to be in the portal. Cam Fancher's out for the year. So that leaves us with Davie Belfort and
All
Brock
right.
Hansel as QB1, QB2 for this game. Again, a couple of other guys have hit the portal. Could you have fielded a class? Are they all ready to come back? Are they all, in shape, available, right? Like, I just think there were too many logistics that had to take place. Would I have loved to have one more UCF game? Sure. But
Absolutely.
I think they're better served using these couple of week time periods to figure out 2026 at this point. And I know people are going to say, well, hey, what about the bowl practices? What about all that stuff? Right. So let's just say UCF said, okay, fine, we'll play. At the minimum, you're probably not going to practice until Tuesday or Wednesday by the time you get everybody back. Let's say you play in the Cure Bowl, which is on the 17th. You got 1 week of practice. Like, I guess you can take those other practices after the bowl game. But again, if I'm opting out, if I'm not playing here, so I just think it's never. It would have been a great if UCF had known right after the season, the day after, like, hey, by the way, you're going to be in for a bowl game. Maybe I'd have felt differently about it, but you gave basically a 10-day period of time where UCF had nothing to do and sent everybody home. And then, oh, by the way, can you get the team back together? On that one, I don't fall. And it's probably in UCF's best interest not to have played.
After watching us get manhandled by Georgia Tech and Duke, the last 2 bowl games that we played in, I'm much fine with us.
The Duke one is a great example, right? Because the Duke one was one where a lot of folks our entire defense, I think, had opted out at that point or had been in the portal. So we had nothing to show for that military bowl when we played a Duke there. So that would have been the kind of experience we would have had that.
Right. Is that what you guys want to watch again? And my answer is no. I don't want to sit through another game like that. And I would much rather go back to what we were talking about before. I would much rather have our coaching staff and evaluators focusing on Act 2 of retaining and evaluating some of these players and trying to figure out what we're going to find in the portal. So I'd much rather them focus their attention on that than have to try and scramble to put together some form of a football team that they can field and go out and probably get their butts kicked in some bowl game that doesn't mean much.
What's funny, Brian, is every time we decide, hey, let's record something, we have something to talk about, yada, yada, yada. We're like, yeah, we could do this, that, and the other. And an hour and 12 minutes later, we have wrapped up this edition of Sons Today. There was much to talk about, probably much more than you and I thought there was to talk about. So appreciate you as always, Brian. Appreciate you, the listener, the viewer, the watcher. Thanks for following along. Thanks for letting us drone on your ears for a little bit. If you have comments, suggestions, feedback, make sure you leave them in the comments here in the chat. We always appreciate that as well. And we'll be back soon. If there's more news next week, maybe Brian and I will fire one of these up again if we have more to talk about, if there's something to chat through. Obviously, the holidays coming up, so our schedules may be a tad different. But if there's news here, you can always count on the Sons of UCF to share it with you. We have Pegasus this week. I'm sure we have Around the Kingdom this week. I think we have Sons Live again this week. So make sure you were tuned in to all of that stuff as well. For Brian, I'm Adam. Everybody have a great evening, a great week. We will talk to you soon. Go Knights.
Charge on.